Okay, so today we're going to have a look at percentages, and we're going to begin by finding percentages of a given total, and then we're going to look at finding percentage increase and decrease. Now hopefully you already know that percentage means parts per hundred. So in the same way century is 100 years, percent means per 100. So what we're finding is, out of every 100, how many we would have. Now, I know that all of you, if you see this symbol, would know that that meant percentage. And if you see that after a number, you know that that means that number out of 100. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to have a look at is finding 25% of 384. Now, I think lots of you could have a good go at this anyway, because you know 25% to be a quarter, so you could find that by halving 384 and then halving it again. Or you could have a go at finding 25% by finding 10%, having two of those, halving that amount, which would be 5%, and adding the three numbers together. But what I'm going to show you is a method that we can use with any totals and any percentages, and that's quite handy if we have a calculator. Okay, so we know that 384 is equal to 100% because that is our full total. Okay, so this number here. What we're going to do is to try and find 1% initially. Okay, and the way that I'm going to find 1% is taking 384 and simply dividing by 100, okay, and that is going to give me 1%, which I'm fairly sure that most of you could work out by yourselves. 384 divided by 100, 3.84. So at the moment that's equal to 1%. But I don't want 1%, I want 25%. This is relatively straightforward. Now that I found 1%, I simply need to times by 25, and that will give me 25% of 384, which is 96. So all I've done is take my 1%, multiplied it by whatever the percentage was that I wanted, in this case 25. You can see the equation down here, and my answer is 96. So I know that 96 is 25% of 384. We're going to have a look at one now that's a little bit more tricky, so you wouldn't be able so easily to use the methods of finding 10%, 5% and 2%. But if we employ the method that I just showed you, again it is relatively straightforward. So remember that I began by finding 1% initially. Okay, so I take my total of 931. If I divide that by 100, I get 1%, okay, which most of you again should have been able to work out. 931 divided by 100 is 9.31. Now, I don't want 1%, I want 67%. So all I need to do is take my answer to 1%, 9.31, which is here, and multiply by whatever is in front of my percentage sign. Okay, this would work if you had 85%, 17%, whatever, as long as you multiplied by that number that was in front of the percentage. So I've done my 1%, 9.31, multiplied by 67 because I want 67%, and my answer comes out as being 623.77. Try that on your calculators if you wish. So we know 623.77 is 67% of 931. Right. What we're going to move on to looking at next is percentage increase and decrease. Now, in my experience, students find this a lot more difficult, but the main thing that we need to remember with this is not to overcomplicate it. There is an equation that we can use for finding percentage increase and decrease, and it's exactly the same for both, okay, and this is the equation. It's the difference over the original multiplied by 100. The reason that we multiply by 100 is to put it as a percentage. Okay, now finding the difference isn't usually what students struggle with, but finding the original. All we need to remember is that the original is usually the first number. I can't guarantee that every time, but usually. Okay, if we're going from if we're going for percentage increase, we're going from a smaller number, increasing it to a bigger number. So our original is going to be the smaller number because that is what we started with. Now with decrease, we're going from having a bigger number down to a smaller number. So our original is going to be what we started with, which was the bigger number. So if we're looking at percentage increase, we're going to divide by the small number. That's going to be our original. If we're looking at percentage decrease, we're going to divide by the bigger number. That's going to be our original. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through now how to find percentage increase and decrease, and it is relatively straightforward as long as you remember that equation. So, percentage increase. I start with 68.4 kilograms of cement and add to it until I have 83.9 kilograms. What is the percentage increase? Okay, so what we're being asked is, from 68.4 kilograms up to 83.9 kilograms, what is the increase, not just in kilograms, but as a percentage? So, the first thing that I need to think about doing is finding the difference. Now, I've included the equation down in the bottom corner of the screen so we can keep referring to it, okay? The difference is going to be found by looking at what is the gap between 68.4 and 83.9 kilograms, okay? So what is the amount that I can put in there that I could add to 68.4 to get me to 83.9? So if I take 83.9 and I take away 68.4, that is going to give me the difference that I'm looking for, okay, which in this case is going to be 15.5 kilograms. If I had 68.4 kilograms and added to it 15.5, then that would be the difference, okay? So here I'm just highlighting them for you. 15.5 is the difference, okay? What we're going to have a look at next is finding the original, okay? Now, as I said earlier, the original is generally the first number, and in this instance, it is, okay? So we're going to look at the original, which is here. We're finding the fraction, the denominator of our equation at the moment, okay? So, 68.4, we're looking at a percentage increase, okay? So we're going from a smaller number to a bigger number. So 68.4 is our original. That is what we started with, okay? And there it is for you. So now we've been able to find the difference of 15.5 and the original of 68.4. All I've done here now is popped those values that I found, 15.5 for the difference and 68.4, back into my equation, which again you can see at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so instead of having difference, I've got 15.5, and instead of having original, I've got 68.4. And again, we multiply that by 100 to find it as a percentage. And if you popped all of that into your calculator, 15.5 over 68.4 multiplied by 100, that would come out as 22.66%, okay? So from 68.4 kilograms up to 83.9 kilograms, I've increased by 15.5 kilograms, which is 22.6 of 68.4, okay? So that is how we find percentage increase. Now percentage decrease is very similar, okay? We're going to find percentage decrease in an almost identical way. The only difference is going to be what we use as the original, okay? So have a think about it as I read this and see if you can work out which is our original. I start with £21.72 and I buy a DVD. I now have £13.24. What is the percentage decrease on the amount I've spent? Now remember, we are not only looking for the amount that the DVD cost, but also what is that as a percentage, okay? So I need to look at £21.72 down to £13.24. What is the difference initially, okay? So again, I'm going to find this by taking my larger value and taking away the smaller value, because that gives us the gap in between, okay? So £21.72 take away £13.24 is going to give us the difference. So the numerator out of our fraction in the equation, the top part, okay? And if you work that out on a calculator or in your head, £8.48 is going to be your answer. So already we've been able to find that £8.48 is the difference, okay? Now again, what we need to look for next is the original. Now, as I said previously, usually the first number, in this case again it is, okay? With decrease I said that we start with a larger value and go down to a smaller value, okay? So our original is the first number, the bigger number, okay? So I've got £8.48, which is going to be my difference, and I'm going to divide by £21.72 because that's my original, and we've gone through finding those. Again, we're multiplying by 100 just to put it into a percentage. So if we pop all of those back into the equation, then we get £8.48 over £21.72 multiplied by 100. Okay? And if you work that out on your calculators, it will come out as 39.04%. So our decrease in money is 39.04%, nearly a 40% decrease from £21.72 down to £13.24. Okay, now remember, with percentage increase and decrease, it can be any units that we're working in. We could be working in pounds and pence, could be working in kilograms or any units of measure, or we could just be working with numbers alone. But that equation is what's really important to remember, okay? So difference over original multiplied by 100.